Okay, welcome back everyone. I'm Aditi. I'll be taking you through today afternoon. So our next presentation will be by Tejaswini and Induja, and I will hand over to them.
Is it working?
That's an excellent question.
Yes.
Stefano, you have it?
Yeah. Is it flipped the other way?
No,
it's okay.
It's,
Okay. That's how it is.
Okay.
No, I think we don't need that. We will use the mouse. No? Yeah.
You have options.
Okay, but that's like really.
Wait, I forgot to do something. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
I read 1:15, 20:25.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, how do I go next?
Yeah, go.
So it was very interesting this morning to see so many similarities that you would again see in our presentation. So don't get bored, please. I know it's after lunch, but
Yeah, it's interesting to see
we'll
that.
try to keep you awake.
Yeah, the weaving has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to start with, what we are looking at is some guiding principles that is actually weaved into our proposal. So we looked at different documents which were provided. Also, of course, there are our own inspirations and our own ideas that are in place. So yeah, vision. Vision echoes. I like that. So yeah, when we talk about vision, it's actually about content and character. So it's not the content and character only of the road on the crown, but also all those projects that would come up should carry content and character of the crown. Social connectivity this is something that we took it from Roger's sketch, which Marie had helped us translating 1990 sketches. One of them talks about for each zone, the crown should be a meeting and circulation place for the Aurovilians. And he further actually details out in that little sketch that the required spaces that crown should contain are for conviviality, which is restaurants and meeting rooms and multipurpose rooms, etc., for relaxations, for public services like distribution centers and laundries and post offices and all that. Under health, he talks about the health center, emergencies and all. The reception, he's talking about the guest houses and information hostels and all. The beauty, of course, and there he's talking about the spaces of performances and gardens and exhibition spaces. So we tried to take those when we are doing a placemaking along the crown. Water connectivity is one of the core that we are looking at, seeing how the water flows along the crown and try to connect them through different spaces. Movement, we are looking at as unifying passing space, and we all through our explorations, we have given a priority to pedestrians and mostly non-motorized vehicle traffics. Positive urban spaces, again, the spaces that we should create along the crown should be more coherent, more well-defined, and try and see how it can be porous and the spaces can flow in and out. Many of us have done that in our proposals, but we're kind of specifying that so that we see our explorations through that lens. piecemeal growth is anyway there for Auroville, and we don't see that going, the kind of growth rate that we have. But if we could make piecemeal growth as a precondition to the larger whole, then we are playing safe, because then the larger holes are there all through. Green-blue infrastructure is, so this is what we are primarily looking at. A ridge, we all know by now, a sheet flow, and the gully flows, canyon flows, channelized flows. And so looking at these water flows, we are trying to propose some kind of a integrated urban water management by doing catchment along these. So we have taken, if you see, all these larger things are actually the porous points which are already existing. So we are enlarging them, and these water bodies could become, I mean, the purpose could be reused or could be recharged. We could always have, where there is a denser area, I mean, right now, whatever development is done here, the water bodies that could come along could be, the water could be reused, while at other places the water could be recharged. So it's a mix of different things depending on how the development is proposed. We are looking at these water channels more as a width of 1 to 1.5 meters, maximum 2 meters. That again depends on, I mean, the water flow, but whatever we saw is, it is not exceeding by 2 meters. So you see the greens along these water channels that we have. These are the riparian buffers, and that is anything between 1 to 5 meters. Again, depending on the type of soil there, the riparian buffer could change. But the development could take that into account, and actually these spaces then can become soft landscaping elements along the crown. And again, I mean, here we tried to do a little effort where, of course, that has to come in our next explorations, that the water bodies, the way we design, could integrate the geometry of galaxy. These are just few pictures of dry creeks and wet creeks. And the way right now these water bodies, when they are full, how we are using right now, I mean, this is our social fabric, and it's interesting that we carry that social fabric.
Usually what we see outside is integrated water management, but now it's an urban management, which is a very much of a not fully researched, and it's not a fully defined concept yet. All the cities are trying to experiment on their own, and try to see even the width of the channels and riparian buffers. Everything is still in most of a research area. And especially that's why it fits into Auroville very much. And this is a place where we could experiment it and show to the world, this works for us. So why not you try it in your place? So that's a beautiful opportunity for us around water here. And coming to proposed movement, as she mentioned, our priority order of movement is non-motorized traffic on the crown, and then to accommodate also a light traffic, which is needed, and also heavy load traffic refers to the trucks that we should be using for the construction work, service-related emergency, and all that. And what we are saying is also, again, 5 to 7 years of immediate implementation is what we are looking at. Our in a way, mobility works for a little more longer, but the development and everything, so we are still focusing on 5 to 7 years is what surely. And then crown in relation, so crown, we are not seeing it in isolation. It's very hard to see. It has come across in all the presentations that we saw in the morning. So we are seeing definitely in relation with all the outside influences, internal needs and all that. And then significant existing ground realities like water, and all those things are very much the base of our exploration. And crown, looking at crown as a continuous experience, more than any other physical like a road or like anything else, it's a continuous experience. That's what we are wanting to highlight. And if we see, so we would start with this area, which is here is where the solar kitchen is. So from here till here, which is the visitor center to this office, the Matri Mandir Gate Road, and this whole stretch is encompassing the sector 3, 4 and 5 of the residential zone. And what we are proposing there at the moment, we have a parallel road which is about only 300 meters away, which is serving the motorized traffic perfectly. And it's kind of non-negotiable for us for next 5 to 7 years at least. So what we are saying is we are only proposing a cycle path along this area, the whole of this area, and continue using this motorized vehicles and create more, if required. This is what is serving the whole area now, and if required, this can be increased as the development comes along, and keep this cycle path, this crown stretch. And then when we go here in front of Unity Pavilion, till this road, this is Language Lab, and here we have this Kotakarai road which is coming and passing through this Perambok land. So we also again, what we are doing is making this area motorized. Because again, this road needs connection, and if we somehow make this motorized, people are discouraged somehow to use this road, which is not in a very good riding condition, but use this, and and this area gets a little, the traffic goes away. And from here, this is the stretch of Darkali forest. So here we are again coming to the similar movement of only cycle paths through that. So here what we have, it was very interesting to see that Fabian's proposal has a little bypass which from Kali Temple Road, which we would like to consider in the next stage of our proposal. So it can still serve the motorized needs for the motorized traffic, and this path is kept very serene in its in the way it is, only through a nice cycle path. And then from here, this is the stretch where we don't own, it's all non-Auroville lands here mostly, and this stretch is again motorized, which is essential at the moment for serving the industrial zones traffic. So when we have this road connecting from outside the axis, and then we have this, this is already done, and we can, this to have the interlink of the industrial zone, this road could serve that purpose, and this is already the paved stretch. We continue the motorized traffic over there. And here is the Bliss, and again it makes more sense because it's serving all the schools, this road, the school buses, and then a lot of traffic outgoing, incoming from, which is not essentially Aurovilles, can also still continue using that as a road. But on the crown, we continue again the cycle and pedestrian path. And here, this is where last school, this is somewhere roughly last school is. And from here, what we are saying is, if you observe that here is our Gaya field, and what we now do to go to Gaya field is we ride until that field and we park our vehicles there. And it's just another little extension if we could do, and the key is that there is a private land here. So which means we have to buy that private land in order to make this. The whole idea of doing this is, again, relates to the priority of having non-motorized traffic on the crown, and not repeating the live example which we have right next to it, which we are trying hard to reverse the process, where we have allowed it and we are not able to get back soon on that motorized thing. So let's not start with that, is what is the idea. So this is a little bypass we are proposing, and continue the traffic, cycle paths and everything along here. Has a nice different experience. And then here, which is our the stretch that we are experiencing every day, and people especially on the crown, we kind of propose a timely movement. Like we have the live example of Promenade. It closes, the motorized traffic closes after 6 in the evening and opens only after 6 in the morning. So that is the time when the residents, the people living over there, we come together. It's a place that becomes active and everything. We don't need to find parks and we don't need to find playgrounds and spaces to hang out outside, but we do it right in front of us. We are connected to that place and we don't need to go away to find entertainment. So that's the idea of doing that. And we are proposing, in order to do that, we need to practically we need to have some parking spaces which would help us park here and then take a walk and all. So this radial, which is Vikas radial, can do that, and we can propose some stop point here and then a parking space for vehicular, hopping from vehicle to walking. So this connection, which is existing, can serve the purpose of people needing to bypass instead of going on the crown. And yeah, and for the people over here, I forgot to mention, the parking spaces for the residents and Kalabhumi and Kripa can move outside, and it's kind of the entry is from outside. So we come and then crown is like a surprise. So that's the kind of experience that comes in. And no. What? Okay, I'll go very quickly. Yeah. Okay, I'll go very quickly. This is an exploration of having a public transport. And if we see here, we are proposing some drop points. And from here, the Unity Pavilion, the bus route starts. Bus, or it can be a small shuttle, actually. Electric shuttle. Yeah, electric shuttle. And it goes and takes people. And every day we have shuttles. Basically, we start with 2. And then as we go on, we increase in population, we can increase the frequency of these shuttles. And this pink line shows the walking radius from the drop points, and the green line shows the cycling radius in 5 minutes. This is where we could cover pretty much all the city on cycles, and we are proposing pool of cycles in each drop point, so that if I'm coming through a shuttle and then I can take a cycle, finish my work in wherever I want to go, and then come back, and then whenever the shuttle again comes, I get back. Oops.
Oh, went too fast.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try to be quick, but I don't think, we are really not even halfway through. Yeah. I don't know. So placemaking is another thing that we tried to do along the crown. Here, the approach that we have taken is, of course, we have referred to master plan as one of the, because master plan has a zoning regulations given, so we have taken that as one of the guideline documents. We have considered the blue-green infrastructure that you saw in our previous slides. We have taken that as one of the primary thing to do the placemaking around it. Like before we said, we are looking at, right now we're looking at only 5 to 7 years as an implementation plan, and not really going a lot more than 5 to 7. And of course, looking at the we are responding to the current needs that are emerging out of our dialogues, that our living here and our experiences. So, yeah, the first stretch, which is sector 3, 4, 5 in residential zone. It also has Mahalakshmi Park here, Maheshwari Park here. So what we are talking about here is mainly, as we all know, sector 1 and 2 is being our priority of development for housing. If in next 5 to 7 we need to, or even if not, we need to have some housing, we could have a mixed housing along here, because we do have this as one of the primary roads that is catering to these places. So we could have mixed dwelling units. We could have guest houses, because right now we have a guest houses, and we could have pool of guest houses there, and it kind of fits in very well if you look at the master plan zoning and how Roger has also envisioned the crown. Guest houses kind of things fit in pretty well. Yeah, and places like, though here it says retail stores, I don't think we like to use that word, but something like distribution centers, which we already have, could also be housing in this area. This is the junction, which is Visitor Center and Matri Mandir crossing. So here we could have arcades, like shopping arcades could have, again this is from master plan, so I'm just reading through, cafes could have banking and financial services there. To the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned, but we are talking of this pedestrian to be not on the other side. Like from here we are kind of doing, stopping with a barrier that people from here, they don't walk in this side.
Only the tourists.
Only the tourists, yeah. The next stretch, which is Unity Pavilion and Savitri Bhavan area. So you see a little meandering here. That's because we want to give an importance to archaeological site which is existing there, and archaeological projects are also part of master plan. We feel current need, and also as part of master plan zoning regulation, hostels could fit in very well there. Yeah, so this is from master plan. This is a megalithic burial ground map that we found. And basically when there was a HT line laid in 2014 in that area, I think Oro Dam to Centerfield, that area, or that MMVC road, in that area when it was laid, about 1 meter trenches were made, and there were some artifacts which were found in that area. In the digging soil, they found quite a lot of stuff there. So we feel that it is important that we are sensitive towards this. This is going through Darkali. So it's very interesting. Darkali right now is, I think Ganesh mentioned or somebody mentioned already that there are three scenarios happening here. One is international zone, then it is Mahasaraswati Park, and then it is industrial zone. So the zoning could also happen, I mean the placemaking could also happen little bit according to that. So what we are looking at is keeping most of it as green park, but could have nature interpretation centers, urban parks largely, and the area where there is industrial zone, we could even have some kind of income generating activities for the forest itself, so that they become self-sustainable in their own functioning. So, yeah, what you see here is what Gopal is, where Gopal and we all are standing here for this was from the morning walk. This is the 4th catchment, which is actually the lowest point. It's very important to know that this is the lowest point on the crown, and hence more of a reason to really protect it and be sensitive towards it. What we saw on our, while we were walking there, is few red sanders, which are, the botanical name is a bit difficult to pronounce, but I'll try. Pterocarpus santalinus, I think. Yeah. So there are few of them on that stretch, and that's one of the endangered species, and it will be nice that we save them, we protect them, we have them, and also it's not legal, it seems to, by law, it's not legal to cut them. So why not have parks, and it's right now they have these spaces which are park-like already. So why not create more of these along that? Yeah. This is non-Auroville land. Actually, a lot of it is Michael Bonke land. So this stretch is already paved, and we could pave rest of it. It's a lot is cleared already. So again, what we are talking of is having services and activities here which are more catering to the industrial zone right now, such as retail stores, or have offices which, or have hardware stores which would kind of support the stationaries and stuff like that to the offices which are in this area, have conference halls so that people can have common conference hall and not build their own conference halls each time in their own campuses, have city management offices, or have courier service, have postal service, these kind of things which are day-to-day needed for offices to run. The next is youth bliss area. So here, like we said before, we are doing this crown, but then have more as pedestrian and cycles mostly. So what we could do around this is actually, and this is in Mahakali Park, almost all of it. So bring back some green there, and have a youth plaza is what we are talking about. And we saw some proposals that also Fabian showed, which were made by youth, and that could be very easily incorporated here. So have cafes, have social landscape spaces. They could have their fairs. We could have our fair, youth fair there. Multi-purpose carts, games rooms, performance areas, etc. So this is again from our work, and even though it is cleared, we could still do things around it, have little landscape spaces and cafes. I mean, if we don't pull this down and convert it into a cafe like that. So yeah. The next stretch is through cultural zone mostly, and a bit of it is in Mahalakshmi Park. So here, what we're talking about is, right now the way Residence Assembly is so active, our community is so active, there is a need of having spaces to meet. They're very limited spaces. So we could have such spaces there. We could have, again, cafes, and am I back to the? No, okay. The other thing is, this is because of the cultural zone, and education in Auroville is not just the mainstream education, but there are also, learning is happening also through so many other alternative ways that we could create spaces for those learnings also. Few more minutes. And then the residential zone. So here, mostly the activities which the buildings projects that we have, which is health services or Mahalakshmi Home, they could have expansions. We could also have, like Induja before said, that it's good to have an evening life on this stretch. So we could bring back some kind of food carts, some kind of chaos, that we can have recreation around this stretch in the evenings. Okay, and here we try to attempt to the sections, try to stick to 16.7, but in our own flexible way.
Yeah. So we are basically trying to see how this 16.7 can be reimagined in different stretches. We have attempted some in different stretches. This is the residential zone sector 3, 4, and 5, which I talked about, starting from Solar Kitchen. What we mentioned was to have a cycle path, which is only about 2.5 meters, which is the building reserve area, in that sense, the infrastructure area, which is according to the TDC section. So it can still go under that, and this can remain a cycle path. And there is water which is flowing under, there are culverts. The idea to raise it is to allow the water to pass through in various ways, like through culverts and other different ways. And this whole area, which is, and then there is another building reserve, which is the infrastructure corridor, which is 3.1. It can still have covered spaces and extended colonnades and all these things, which are bioclimatically also helping the buildings. And this area is just not developed at the moment. It's kept and it's used in a different way. It's organized in a different way that it serves the residential, as a support for the residential use. And that's what we are imagining here in that whole stretch. Oops.
So one thing is at places where we know that water is flowing under, we could do the deep trenching at those places for the infrastructure. Also, we are not very very clear about when we talk about the infrastructure. We also at times looking at, for example, water distribution as also a decentralized water system. So we do not know how much such large building reserves are required. So we did it with that limited knowledge that we will, when we look at all other distributions, all other infrastructures, and not only the HT line, which is already going, I think, through this area. So looking at, once we have all those plans, then I think it is more clear what kind of building reserves are required for infrastructure.
Yeah, in some places it could be only one corridor instead of two. So we are not technically that, we don't know the know-how, so that's why we are still sticking to this. And here you see this, there can be barriers which still, this is the road which is connecting from the other parallel road, and people can still cross the crown but not go through the crown. So in that area, sorry.
Next.
Yeah, it's late. So from Savitri Bhavan to Language Lab, so this is in plan. So this is the archaeological site where the cycle path and the experience of crown is still continuing, but just the road is taking a meandering path, and then the loop road in future can connect to the road, and all that can happen, and then all the buildings coming around it can take form to merge with the crown. And so here also we are keeping the building reserve, which is 2.5 meters, and then the motorized road, which is, we refer to the 3.7 that is existing, 3.7, 3.8 that is existing. And then this is the whole combined pedestrian zone. This is where we can actually put in all our energy to create different urban spaces. So this is where is that. And and then this is Darkali stretch where we are proposing again only the cycle path and with not disturbing the forest much. And under the, so we interestingly saw this photo, which is like there is a waterway and the infrastructure is still undisturbed and going, and there is a movement also possible. So there is much possible with the way the place is without disturbing it. So that's an important thing, and the water catchments can be enlarged, and we can have more catchment here because we are placed rightly on the ridge. There's a lot more scope for us to do the water management. And this is the industrial zone stretch where most of Michael Bonke's land is. And here, here the 16.7 is a little reorganized, and then the motorized road here goes. And this is the space where all these cafes, the kiosk for drinking water, and all those things can come. And this is the next stretch, which is the YC. So this has given in a sense, if we see positively the clearing, it has given a space for us to reorganize it differently. And so what we are saying is it's a wide stretch, and a lot of activities can happen. We know how that place is and how much more the place can be. And a lot more trees in the middle of the crown, and gives shade perfectly and gives a very different experience, and every space for everybody now to get in there. And this is a cultural zone stretch in front of Kripa and Kalabhumi, where we are proposing that bypass of the road. The road is again going behind that area. So again here the 2.5, 7.4, which is a combined pedestrian zone, and again the infrastructure corridor continues. And and spaces are passing through, and there is parking behind. So the movement is there, the continuous movement is there, continuous experience of crown is also there. This is the last stretch. So this is the residential zone, existing residential zone 1 and 2. So here it can be again the water here, because now the infrastructure is already laid. There can be a overland flow, like on the road, like how in front of Ilainargal there is a little dip in the road. So those kind of things can be done. And again, this is the space where we got to reorganize and bring back the social life. So it can be meandering cycle paths, pavilions, and all that. Yeah, I think. Sorry. No, not last, sorry.
Okay, we won't talk about it. This is basically a bit like just one sentence. Yeah. That this is something which we got inspired by Henrik's presentation last time, which was interactive. He called it something else. It was public plaza,
Social
I think.
spaces.
We are calling it interactive spaces, which is along the thing. And what we're talking about is,
we looked at every 200 meters and saw the possibility. There were naturally many things that were already happening. Could just enhance it and have that.
And the human experience. We will leave it here. We won't talk.
Yeah.
This is what we were basically. We think that the kind of experience that people can get along the crown. Sorry for such a long time we took.
Okay, we'll have again 5 minutes of silent reflection and then get some questions from the DREAMWEAVING architects or feedbacks. All right, so do we have any potential sharings, any comments by the DREAMWEAVING architects? Anything to integrate? Yes.
Thank you, Tejaswini and Induja. The sections that you presented through different zones, bringing out the different cultural aspects of those zones in the sections are definitely a steal. And thank you for them.
Anyone else? Any other appreciations or comments?
I would just second what Shala just said about the sections in the crown, and then giving space to that archaeological thing, because it is something quite special, and I think that needs to have its space.
Okay. Anyone else? Then I think we can move on to our next presentations. Thank you. So next up, I think we have Henrik presenting. Yes. Over to you, Henrik.
All right. Good afternoon. So can I also click myself, or? Yeah. Okay. Just give me 1 minute to finish the presentation, and you can do it. Okay. So what we did, or what was a big part of the beginning of the exploration, was trying to overlay all the information that is there. Then also so I kind of went through all the stuff that was done before. So I got hold of a file which had all the Roger things in it, and then I overlaid what Suhasini kind of sneakily proposed in her development plan in how to do roads. Then the 2007 plan of Anupama, how she treats the industrial zone, the lines of force, and how she has her tweaks on the inner areas. Then Fabian's proposal was a big input. And I tried to kind of make sense of it. And so what my main takeaways in the beginning analysis were that, okay, one thing would be to try, on the one hand, to go without the outer ring as much as possible, especially in these parts and up here where the outer ring would cut through the forest quite a lot. And then also that Kotakarai is just a no-go zone, and also having the outer ring just parallel to the village road is kind of a little silly. And so then what came also from several sources already is the need for the bypass here at Ida and Shavadi. And so then the next thought was, okay, what are actually the connections? And especially, okay, a big wish for the Crown was to have it as much shared space or as least traffic as possible, and at least in the residential zone. So to really one aim of this, actually, it's not working? Yeah, it's a little cleaner. So one aim was then to at least get this stretch as a pedestrian zone. So and then I tried to kind of, okay, one thing is the idea that the existing inner road, which is Parambokaland and might well exist up into the future, that this is one bypass anyway. And so the other idea was then to also bring this up here when we get this bypass down here. So there's different options possible, either in front of the line of goodwill or behind. I like the idea that this gets some connection here and that the pedestrian zone gets even extended. And then over at the other side, so here a lot of presenters also kind of agree that, okay, a little bit car traffic would be permissible, but if you want to have the least possible, then you want to get the traffic away from that road. So here we also could have the outer ring activated. And then the question is, okay, how does the traffic come back here? So I took a kind of straightforward version where there's not so much damage to the forest here. So just using the existing bypass, what is in Suhasini's plan is going up here. So this could also be an option where then it cuts over here, or extending the outer ring all the way and cutting through the forest, which is maybe not necessary. So in the upper part, it's also mostly following Suhasini in the sense, okay, we don't need to demolish so many houses to get some roads here, and this is the bypass to Dakali, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I think with that bypass, it's very natural to just, okay, to say that the ring, the crown itself is for cyclists. For pedestrians, you just have nice paths through the forest. So this is what you anyway want when you have a forest, and the cars go through the bypass. So I'm not sure. I'm not even very convinced that it would need something like these high lines or whatever, which is kind of a fancy, nice thing if you really need a perfect circle. But yeah, and so generally how the traffic comes along up here, and how much does it need to touch on the Crown Road, and also the whole question here, I think that is the first question that I would have to a traffic planner. So one next step for me was to
you have to be patient.
Yes, yes,
Click
yes.
once, wait.
That's good.
Okay, relax, breathe.
So one next step was to kind of get an idea of what could be a good distribution of public spaces along the Crown. And so one general rule, which is also coming from these pattern languages, which were mentioned quite often, is having public spaces every 400 meters, or at least in 400 meters distance from every house in the residential zone. So, and since this is the pedestrian area, I took the liberty to put even a few more. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 at the big junctions. The most important being the historically given one in front of Solar Kitchen, and then 2 smaller ones in between, which is also then inspired by what the previous Dreamweavers had with the axis coming from the Matrimandia. And this follows along the Crown, so then in the other 3 zones, like you have 2 or 3 public spaces with 1 major public space and 1 or 2 minor. So in the international zone, 1 major, which would also connect to the public spaces inside, and 1 minor, 1 major in the middle of the industrial zone, and 1 minor here, and the next one would be then a youth center, and 1 major in front of Kalabumi, and 1 minor again on this axis. So, I don't think that this master plan is particularly interesting as a reference. That's GMP planning a new city near Shanghai. But what I kind of took away, so when I was thinking about how does Roger Angers understand the buildings along the Crown, so he has the idea, okay, he wants to connect the inside and the outside. That's why he makes the buildings quite porous, puts them up on stilts, and there's a lot of gaps in between. And then the road becomes kind of secondary. It's just, okay, where do we put the road? Just outside? Or this is at least the feeling that I get from that. And for me, I mean, I heard a lot of people kind of resonating with the point that this road actually feels like the actual cut. Okay, maybe this is open and connects to the inside, at least symbolically to some degree. But with the road in front, it's a little difficult. Then there's the section from ATDC where there is buildings on the other side, which are not really shown here. Okay, but when I then saw this master plan where the road is really just running in front of the buildings that kind of frame the Crown or hold the circular road, the same with a road here inside along the lake. And for me, it was kind of, okay, on the one hand, you want the movement through the buildings, but actually kind of the energy of that circular movement is not really held. It kind of dissipates. And then I actually think also getting really the density from outside to the ring road is kind of also what connects outside to inside. So in that sense, what you already more or less saw, what I did a little bit as an exercise was, okay, like if you really want to fill up this edge and to get like continuous building mass as much as possible, and also framing the public spaces, how far do you get? And so then you have breaks where there's already existing houses, and then already the centers that come either from these axes or from the intersections with the radials. And I also picked up the idea that I think Marie brought up first, like to, for example, have structures in front of the library or maybe connecting here in front of Humanscapes a little bit to get this feeling of having the Crown Road held from the outside. Yeah, so, I mean, the more or less success of that. Yeah, then it's always the question, like, how much do we already take what is there in the plan by Anupama and Roger. Anyway, so the next idea, okay, here maybe one idea of how to have an actually very framed public space connecting to the public space in front of Unity Pavilion and following that axis. And one other idea was, okay, what actually gives these axes meaning? Okay, so one thing is that is already happening, that at least at two public spaces, these lines meet with the crown. And then first I thought, okay, like what makes a typical traditional plaza, you know, like it's not coming. So I mean the cheesiest example, Piazza San Marco. So you have one main facade, the church, and then you have some vertical element, the tower, you have the arcades, you have a clear frame, but it's not a rectangle, stuff like that. And so what came to mind is then two elements. Okay, we don't want to have churches, wrong direction.
What do you want to show? Go back at the beginning, no?
Yeah. Yeah, the file is heavy, that's why it's jumping. Here. So, where these lines come from is the meditation chambers. Then the translation to, okay, this is like the individual spiritual, and this would then be the public. So you would not have another meditation chamber, but maybe along these axes you would have the public spaces. There was one pattern by Christoph Alexander, which is called public living spaces. So you have a roof, it's covered, you have furniture, maybe even fixed or loose or both. And along the major axis, they could even reverberate the geometry. So you could have a hexagon on the Solar Kitchen Plaza, then a triangle opposite to Savichu Bhavan, and the square, and the industrial zone, and the circle, and the cultural zone. And then you would have these smaller ones in between. Yeah, and then the question about the vertical elements. Okay, I'm not so deep into that topic of in how far the water towers actually still make sense in the new concepts. But I mean, there's kind of also a little bit of a tradition to kind of make some fancy water towers in Orville. So why not having these along on the public places? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and this is a little bit, okay, what is a contemporary interpretation of celebrating communal space, so Burning Man Festival. This is one proposal for the Burning Man And this is like our close cousin, Accosanti, public spaces. Yeah, and then also, I mean, I didn't take too much care of really getting an idea how to treat these water bodies, but one in front of the line of goodwill, and then you would have where all this water comes. So I took this more pragmatic approach. Okay, where more water is, there you would have more water bodies and some trench along the road and here, and maybe one hexagonal water body at the square. Yeah, so this is one very contemporary example of getting a vertical element on a public space. I think there's only a staircase inside, so a watchtower. And this is also a watchtower, but this is also how a water tower could look like. And this is actually the full-fledged example of it, Niall McLaughlin Architects. So where you then have all the elements, so you have a gate, you have the public building, you have the vertical element, which is now a watchtower and not a church anymore. And you have the monument, which could be the art piece today. Yeah, and this section kind of exemplifies how I think right now about the Crown Road, to really have this very, urban facade on the outside, and everything on the inside can be this more loose pavilion style architecture. And yeah, these sections are not yet so much related to different parts on the Crown, but for me this was like just collecting the first 4 examples that kind of made sense to me. So the very conventional way to do it, having 2 rows of trees, small road 6 meters in the middle, 2 pedestrian lanes, and then the whole thing inverted. You have the cycle path 4 meters in the middle and 2 times 3 on the outer, and this is what I found more interesting for the pedestrian zone, where you have a shared space and only permitted traffic, and the tree line a little bit away from the more urban facade, so that you kind of create that street room together with a tree line, and then again the pedestrian area. And this would be another version of that, where you have then articulated bus lane of just 3 meters. And so this is what we try to get a sense of. Okay, how well does it come out? So in gold we have these public spaces. The next one would be here. And so kind of the takeaway a little bit from these renderings is, okay, maybe these spaces have to be a little denser, actually, that we thought of them as a little bit too wide. Yeah, so this would be the beginning of one of the lines of force. And here's the second communal space with a framed public space, and the vertical element, lines of trees. Yeah, and just to underline this with some fact, I think this is a very nice resource, quite recent, and there they specifically say, if you want to slow down traffic, don't make the road wider than 3 meters. So that means 3 meters or 6 meters is the width that you want, or if you want to have this kind of in-between thing, 4.5 or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Henrik. So we'll take a few minutes again to quietly reflect and write notes. Okay, so are there any appreciations, any feedback or comments to share from the Dreamweaving?
Yeah, Henrik, I said it the last time already. I really liked the way how what I have proposed and yours kind of build on top of each other, which is really nice. When I saw your first sketch around the crown with the buildings, which you drew out, so congratulates also on your plan language. I think it's a lot of work. Also the way how you try to integrate all the different informations, different galaxy versions, the city center studies. Great. So for me, it really becomes rich. It becomes really a tapestry of an urban form, and I think it's good. We can debate on the shapes, of course, and all, but overall, I think it's really a step forward. So thanks.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Henrik. So I really like the way you designed those plazas, and the last time it was very sketchy, but now it's very concrete, and also the fact that you brought back the memories of the last dream weaving with the lines of light, and you tried to make that connection with Matrimandir. That's something that I'd like to be inspired. Is that the politically correct thing to say? Not steal, but borrow. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anything to share? Okay, then I think we can move to the next presentation, the last one before tea time. Yes, applause to Henrik. And yes, next up we have Manu and Tanya. Over to you.
Hello. Yeah. You're on. Yes. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
You can stand
On the stage. Okay. Yeah. Both. So, by now you're not probably surprised that we are both together. Those of you who've seen our presentations, they were tending to come closer and closer together. So we decided we'll just present together. So, shall we?
Come. Sorry.
Okay. So these were the two big references we had when we started. The 103 pages of the master plan and the relatively condensed and very nice read of the 7 pages of the brief. But reading these two, we actually felt quite bogged down because we were in this context and time when all these forces are coming at us, mostly from Oronet, I would say, and you know, and we were pulling our hairs to see how we can do this, you know, how we can bring the perfect circle down on the ground, which seems to be the urgent reality, you know. The urgent reality for Orwell is to interpret this perfect circle for the ground realities. How can we do this? And that was when we were helped very well by this wise young rabbi from Egypt, and you know, who came to us and said that, you know, 54 years back, 24 young architects went to the ceremony at the inauguration, and then promptly afterwards they fell asleep, and they woke up 7 weeks back, and started to look at the city and try to see what to do with the reality. So the proposition the rabbi had for us was history versus unity. So try to dissociate ourselves from all the stories we're hearing, everything that you see on Ornet. Just come, take the technical facts, pretty much like what Henrik did, read all those literatures. We didn't really dare to read all of it, but then there's the story of outer circle, 30 meters wide. But thankfully, that's not in the 7 pages for us. So, so we said we'll take the question out. So coming back to the inauguration day, this was a prominent symbol, the mother symbol. If you look closer at it, you see pretty much everything that you see in the master plan. You see the outer bound, you see the green belt, you see the outer ring, you see the city in 4 sections, you see the crown, you see the peace area. So it's very interesting that it's modeled on these symbols, of the Oroville sign. And of course, the first references, the first principles for the city are these sketches. This one went to Satprem and that one to Huta, and both quite clear, city in 4 sections. And this one for the Unity, Park of Unity. This was from the archives. You see the lake here, you see Matri Mandir, you see the tree, and 4 gardens all around, and all pretty much in a circular form. Now if you look at the charter, you see very interestingly, like we notice that there is a correlation between the 4 sections of the charter and the 4 sections of the city. So to look at the place of an unending education could be a focal point at the cultural section, industrial section, a bridge between the past and the future, leaping boldly forward towards future realizations. If you look at the interpretation of Roger of the industrial zone, you see all those lines of force leaping boldly forward over the crown, and that seems to correlate also. Belonging to nobody in particular, of course, international and site of spiritual researchers, living embodiment of an actual unity, and that could be the living section, the life section, the residential. And it was interesting to know that Mother had instructed to actually put this line that Oroville is the city, the capital C, at the service of truth around the tree, and she chose the tree to be the focus of the city. So these were very interesting things at the inauguration, and this, of course, the vision model, which is also in our brief that we need to refer to this all the time. Of course, again, quite a bit of circle there. If you look at the context of India, you have the Vastu Shastra, the Manasara Vastu Shastra, that talks of the Padmaka town planning system, where you have a roundish form to the city with 4 sections and a spiritual center with ponds all around, water all around. So pretty much an interesting correlation we found. And looking at the circle, we see that it's actually got a great amount of meaning. It is all about inclusion, totality, wholeness, focus, timelessness, of course the sun and the moon. And this is the most interesting, at least for us when we talked about it, infinity and unity, and I'll come to that a bit later. In physics, if people or an object goes around in a circle, you experience a net inward force. It's called centripetal force. So it's probably the reason why people go in circles around temples. You want to be drawn to the divine. So in this case, walking on the crown could mean drawing ourselves inside our own selves or towards Matri Mandir. It's a creative and emergent mode of evolution, and Sri Aurobindo put it very well. The intellect must consent to pass out of the bounds of a finite logic and accustom itself to the logic of the infinite. So from the finite logic to the infinite logic. And how can we do this? To represent this mathematically, you would say the circle bounds, everything that's inside it is finite, and the best example is the number 1 for finite, and everything that's outside the circle is infinite. So finite to infinite. That's the transition that we need to look towards. And if you were to look at the crown as a site of a continuous dream weaving, like where we are dreaming our dreams, of course, but weaving our dreams with the mother's dream as we walk on the crown. So can this give us some clues on what to do on the crown? And why I asked this question, what to do on the crown, is because from the last set of dream weaving exercises, David had summarized that there's not enough programming on the crown. As per the master plan, if you take all the list of buildings that are on it, it's not enough mass out there to create what we, is that correct? The way, yeah. Yes, so there is not enough. So either we choose not to build the entire crown and leave those spaces empty as some of the designs suggest, or we dream up certain uses, which are not on the list. So I actually got inspired by Lata's presentation, Lata and Prashant. I think a few of you, Tejaswini, Suhasini, and Dharmesh, they were also part of it. So they had divided the crown into 8 sections, very pragmatically, 8 sections based on socio-political, cultural, and topographical factors. And we just took those sections from that study, and we said we'll try and imagine the dream of the mother playing itself out through plaza experiences, through the walk experience in different sections. So with the international zone, it would definitely be somewhere on earth a place which no nation could claim as its own. So, and you're allowed to laugh here because we've added some functions which are not on the list, just to fulfill the program of the crown. So actually this one is on the list, I think, and that one, International Youth Hostel, that's already on the list, but the other one's probably not. And perhaps doing things like this, where you actually stop all the traffic coming to the crown at the Bharat Niwas parking, perhaps extend it and put a solar roof on it so that it's well shaded for the vehicles. And those vehicles that are electric can find charge there as well. And then add buildings around the crown. And there's one great thing that happens every year in Savitri Bhavan is the flower exhibition. And at the flower exhibition, hundreds of children come over a week, I think, and they actually paint after watching the flowers. So events like this, inspiring stories like this can unfold. Place of peace, concord, and harmony, where all the fighting instincts of man would be used exclusively to conquer the causes of his sufferings and miseries. And we feel the Kali forest could be the place which could transform from the current crisis that it's facing to a place of peace and harmony. And here, perhaps, out of the resolution of this crisis, we might find ideas for such things. And here we feel we need to be inspired by previous ideas on this, of light approaches to the lines of force, perhaps even radically transforming the nature of the lines of force. Instead of building tall buildings, heavy buildings, we do ultralight buildings all in wood, perhaps a complex of tree houses. So that would also fit with the themes that are here, climate resilient development and bioclimatic and peaceful design. A place where needs of the spirit and concern for progress would take precedence. So that would be from Darkali to the Town Hall Road. And these kind of institutions can come on the lines of force. A place where children would be able to grow and develop integrally without losing contact with their souls. And education would be given not for passing examinations or obtaining certificates and posts, but to enrich existing faculties and bring forth new ones. The first one out here is a real project. It's actually part of the list of projects in the original planning of Auroville. It so happens 22 years back I did use that as my thesis project. So I have a connection. And so this is an idea we are trying to promote, where different units of Auroville can work together. Just like we are dream weaving architects, maybe units in Auroville can collaborate to produce, come up with innovative products. So again, the need for higher education in Auroville is also something that perhaps could populate this space. After school, can children actually do their higher education here in Auroville? Bodily needs of each one would be equally provided for. The PTDC area. And here, the only addition to the existing program here we're proposing is the Auroville Lounge. It's a place, it's a large lounge where you can just go and hang out with friends or just alone or have chance encounters as you're sitting there and reading a book. So just a place which is always open, 24/7, it's always open. So that's one thing. And that could be in this area, PTDC to the Bharat Nivas Road. Beauty in all its artistic forms, painting, sculpture, music, literature would be equally accessible. Of course, the cultural. And here perhaps, considering the number of artists we have from all different backgrounds, it's time to launch something international. And I don't think this exists, this kind of organization exists yet. Artists Beyond Borders or Without Borders. And the cooperative installations, we have centers all over the world. Why can't we do global installations? There are many artists who specialize in global installations. Perry Lynch, who stayed with us in international, she does global installations. So why can't we do from Auroville? And money would no longer be a sovereign lord. This might be controversial, but we're trying to propose a place where you can land in Auroville and not have to shell out a lot of money. So when you're young and out of college and you need to stay, you have a space and there is food as well. So that's relationships of emulation and collaboration and real brotherhood. Co-creation studios, Center for Collaborative Design, and mandapams of unity. I'll come to that a bit later. So that's that section, which is already built up on one side. And that's the overall, it's just a sketch and it's not to be taken literally, please. So it's got a lot more work is needed to do. But one thing we kept in mind is the lines of light, which come from the previous dream weaving, to keep opportunities for people who are passing on the road to actually see Matri Mandir from these gaps. And there was some thought that was put in previously, and you said perhaps the landscaping could be done in a way that you could have a glimpse, at times. So that's one thing. And the other thing that you might notice already is that the crown forms a barrier to motorized traffic for the entire inner city area. The roads don't cross the crown. The roads that come in from Bharat side and from Certitude side stop here in a solar shaded parking. In fact, people are already encouraged in the service node near the outer ring to stop. If they don't, they can go further. And if they still want to take vehicles, they can go in through the sectoral roads. So something like this. So ensure that inner city is completely pedestrian and cycle oriented. Now, overall design principles. Now, this is a place I visited a month back, 2 months back. Tirupudi Marudur is South Tamil Nadu near Tirunelveli. There are hundreds of these mandapams on the riverside and on the street, and all for people to use in whichever way they want. And people have like 100 uses for this, over the 1,000 years they've been in existence. So the logic of this, to me, is infinite. It's like people who built these are visionaries, and they've been in use for 1,000 years. These structures. This is a temple very close to Auroville, near Chengalpet. It's also a school. It's also a hospital. So, and it's built 1,100 years back. So 1,100 years back, people had the vision to build multiple complex uses into one building. And this temple in Tanjavur, Brihadeshwara temple, is a marvel because it's the only monument in India, at least I know, where the shadow of this capstone does not fall on the grounds of the temple at any point in the day, from sunrise to sunset. The shadow does not fall. So there was a story to this. The king, Rajaraj Chola, asked Kunjaramallan, the architect, how do you think this round stone weighing 100 tons is going to stay 70 meters up for long? Don't you think it will fall in one earthquake or something? So the architect said, don't worry, Raja. Not the stone, but not even its shadow will fall on the ground. So that was his metaphorical outlook. And so that's the kind of vision with which you plan a building. And coming back to our problem, 1 to infinity. If you have to make this leap, can anyone suggest a way to do this? To transform 1 to infinity, what can we do? Yes? Take away 1. So then it's 0, right? Okay. Oh, and then you form the circle. Okay, no, that's not what I was looking for. Come to this. Look at this. Yeah, this expression. You divide 1 by 0, and the answer limits to infinity, tends to infinity. So perhaps we should look at 0 quite seriously and look at what we need to eliminate from our system. Good health comes from assimilation and elimination. So what do we need to eliminate to stay healthy? So this certain things we definitely need to eliminate. Danger to children on the roads. I faced this myself a month back when I was with my son cycling from International Zone to Kalpana. And 2 times on the road there was a close call. One with an auto and one with a truck. So it's real and it will only get worse. And I don't dare send my child on his own cycling. So how can we do this? Helmut had very interesting observations with Belenja. Public transport, the ultimate solution. And definitely streets should be designed for children and not cars first. So we need to look at children widths first and not the car widths. And they had suggested this 4-bus system with shuttles, and perhaps it could extend to the outer ring as well. And would you like to say?
Can you switch me on?
It's on.
Okay. So for the immediate future, maybe a smaller shuttle bus would be ideal. It's only 1.50 meters wide, has 14 seats, and if we buy a couple of them, we can slowly eliminate the car traffic inside, then eliminate it to the outer ring, and the same with the motorbikes. And there was an idea that was some years back. Somebody worked already on a solar tram. But that is for the later phases maybe, and technology will advance probably by then. That's you.
This is when we are fully populated, 50,000 people plus God knows how many workers, plus God knows how many tourists. We'll have the need for some transit system. But that's a lot more in the future. And this for now is the best traffic calming method. And perhaps we can have goshalas with the outer ring road, with the farm group. We can have a situation where you have, and in the bioswales we put cattle grass, So, so the cattle are happy, we are happy. Definitely dedicated, eventually dedicated ways for public transport. And we said perhaps pedestrian walking paths over buildings. And these can be interesting also for skateboarding. If you've noticed in Town Hall, those high-level bridges are a favorite for skateboarders. You know, they love it, and roller skates. And so there could be multiple modes of mobility for the crown. So higher level connections. So because these widths of the crown are too much for natural concrete bridges to happen, perhaps intermediate supports and higher level connections of buildings, and then making the roofs accessible and making, you want to say something?
So there also our ideas merged, because he had a skywalk and my original idea was also a skywalk. I took it as the symbol, Sri Aurobindo says that the meaning of the crown would be the higher consciousness. So then I was wondering how to make a skywalk symbolic as a real crown and not just a ring road. Yeah, and then I tried this experiment with a water droplet. When a water drop falls into water, it makes a crown, and afterwards comes up a blob that looks like the Matrimandir. So my whole exploration was about how to make that kind of symbol relate to the Matrimandir. And first, yeah, I had a bit more massive things that could take infrastructure. And then I found that a lighter version might be better. So when you look at this, it would form really like a crown, and it could have multiple use. So with creepers, it could shade the whole area below. At the same time, Omar had mentioned that the wind, since we are on a ridge, doesn't hit some parts of the crown. So we could put elements to direct the wind onto the crown. Yeah, at the same time, it would be the visual for the inner city when you arrive from outside, and yeah, it gives many more opportunities to enter the parks on a higher elevated level horizontally.
Okay.
That's it, yeah.
So there could be many more pedestrian walks behind buildings, of course, the way we talked. And yeah, go quicker. At ecologically sensitive areas, we could use these bridge connections, even for public transport, through these girders. This is called Virendeel Bridges, Virendeel trusses, Virendeel girders. These ones are very efficient to span long spans without columns. And to look at how to eliminate this aspect of water just running off to the sea, one just needs to be inspired by the local systems. You just take the micro watershed, plot the points, and add wherever possible collection points where the junctions of rivulets are, and perhaps even make it geometric the way it was done in Tamil Nadu before. And here we've added some more collection points for the lines of force, for the wastewater and the rainwater. So some of it treated wastewater, some of it rainwater collection. And one aspect we noted, this is a picture from Jos, the local system of lift irrigation from lower areas to higher areas. It would be a bit strenuous for us to implement this now here, but perhaps we could do windmills, the way we used to do. So windmills connected with the kunds. So wherever the kunds have a lot of water, we have a windmill. And that's where it has a lot of water is where the crown road is, then where the bund is. You have a potential to collect a lot of water, especially here. And you could have more windmills to that point, and it could actually help. It's going the other way. Oh.
This one, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and the other interesting thing is that the kunds, as Rajiv mentioned in his presentation, they use kunds on a hill slope to make a forest, because the kunds tend to leak water, and the water tends to irrigate subsurface. So that's a great thing, because you don't lose any water to evaporation. So you could plant around the kunds. and create food security. So especially downstream, it would be easy to irrigate. So could we create a scenario where food can be grown in the inner city without irrigation, without surface level irrigation? So that's one thought.
Wait a second. And you might be wondering why there are so many people sitting.
Yeah.
So our ideas also correlated a bit because I had in mind to make round amphitheaters that could catch water and have a stage in the middle and can be used for meeting places. Either a floating stage or these islands that just get narrower so that you have a smaller and smaller stage in rainy season. And yeah, this idea with pumping the water up into them and making them really useful, yeah, it's a good combination.
So that's how all the layers tend to work together. The water, the ground, which is the farming, the roof layer. And at the roof, we say that we do agri-solar. So we do rooftop farming with solar. So you have both energy and food coming. And all of this could... So you have, on the crown, to work on livelihood options, it could be an engine for new livelihoods, not only for Aurovilians, but also the village population, because at the service node, there's a lot of possibility of a bazaar. And I've seen village people in Alankupam growing food specifically for Auroville communities organically and selling them directly to the communities. And some of the excess they keep at the house, and you can go and buy them, organic food at the village. So why can't that happen at the bazaars? Unemployment. So the idea of craft weaving, perhaps Aurelio is here, so Swaram and Oreka and Treehouse Community and perhaps Bamboo Center and perhaps even Botanical Garden can collaborate to make a musical wind house, which actually is a tree house with a food forest next to the Kund. And you have the 23-meter AV55. And the shaft is constantly moving up and down. Sometimes, most of the time, it generates noise. So can that noise be converted to music by adding a sound box? Pretty much like your, the wind-up, the sound thing. So you have musical drums, and perhaps Swaram can innovate there and help make... so for each plaza, you can have a musical experience. If you have a windmill attached to a plaza, you can have something that's going on with the wind. Yeah? This Jugaad is a wonderful exploration in Indian cities. That's a Royal Enfield motorcycle converted to a family car. And that's the Auroville version of it. The hand cart converted to, and of course the electric motorcycle. And what about money? Can there be a section of the crown that does not transact in money or blue sheet or gift economy or any such thing, but it's actually a zero money area? So you have goods and services in that section, and you're not obliged to even sign on anything or give any contribution. Perhaps more activities like the free store. In India, this is a tradition. This is a security net for children in neighborhoods. You have shaded play spaces on streets. Play cricket, children play cricket. All the times I've seen children playing all day, and it's shaded. And
yeah, so here I looked a bit at the courts that we have in Auroville, and even when we have trees just next to it, the moment they don't have enough shade, they are unusable during the day. So we have that problem in Dea Shakti. Although we have lots of trees, we cannot use everything. And then I looked at the existing roads and the width and the trees and how much shade they actually give. And then the next one. So I tried to come up with a solution how, since the crown is mainly pedestrian and cyclist, can be shady and really an experience for us, and not just only after the inner buildings be an experience for pedestrians. So I made it 4 meter because thinking of the small shuttles, thinking of just cyclists and one ambulance a month or a week, and maybe some lorries, the 4 meters that we have in front of Kalpana, or the 3 meter 70, would be more than sufficient for that. The right side would still have options to develop later, but the good thing is by pushing the infrastructure to the outside, we have 2 layers where we actually can have bigger trees and really develop something. Got inspired by Mary's design, Marie's design of the weaving of the path through shaded area and to really have landscaping there, not just an alley that is invisible because it's round.
And can we have regenerative buildings that are truly zero carbon? Is it really possible? And perhaps Darkali, we could have an attempt at making all wooden buildings using things like compressed laminated timber and things like this. And perhaps enhancing the water catchment on that. This picture was much bigger in the morning, but after seeing Neha and Ganesh's, we've cut out the building in the background. There's going to be tree houses now. Okay, so that's more like a section of the crown with the agri-solar system, solar panels. And thirst and hunger. This is the place where you can go to eat without having to pay or without having to even gift money. And this kind of places exist all over India. And these kitchens work 24/7. Sadness. I think this is the central point of we started with this whole thing of why are people having to kill themselves, and these days we see a lot of this, more and more of suicides. Why are people feeling lonely? Why are people feeling sad? And perhaps it's the isolation. Perhaps it's the city, in the typical sense of the word, setting in to the consciousness. You feel trapped in your apartment and you don't feel the opportunity to interact and have uplifting chance encounters. So that's a beginning, the start of this exploration. We need a dream plaza. And thank you, Johnny, for that. And we said we should design this. And this could be ideally where most people go. So we said, could the plaza be an undulating experience? Not a very big space, but a very long space with constantly changing sections. So from Kalpana to suddenly it becomes narrow, and then suddenly it opens up with a kund and a windmill. And then all around Solar Kitchen, it goes narrow in a passage and then comes into a wide space, open space. And can this be kind of a place where people could go and just hang out? And whenever you feel low, whenever you feel sad, you just go watch people. People watching is a great therapy. And unfortunately at Solar Kitchen, it's only 1 hour long or 2 hours long maybe in a day. That's not enough. We need 24/7 people watching. Places where you can be in the night also.
Yeah, that is a similar idea to bring more life to the crown itself. So while we are waiting for developing all the buildings or coming up with ideas what actually to do there, and also keeping in mind that some of the buildings like the Asante or the birthing center will not be interesting to just walk in. So I was proposing like some little buildings like a cafe or something there for people to spontaneously meet. Or buildings even that bridge a little bit over the crown to give not only shade but also to bring these areas. And then also to create a lot of outdoor meeting places like round tables or little semi-public shaded places that are easily accessible and visible for everybody. And this is when you look from Kalpana down to Solar Kitchen. I mean, just ideas to walk behind that, because now we got used to it, but this area actually is not very amazing as an experience to walk through. So that's just ideas.
With the bridge.
On the other side, this would be spontaneous encounters. Somebody who works on that table, doesn't need to be a cafe, would automatically encounter a lot of people passing by.
So a place to unwind, a plaza to relax. Zero twists and turns, and this has been our summary of our experience. Ganesh, Neha, me, Tejaswini, Tanya, we went on an exploration.
So guys, you're way over time.
Okay.
We're ahead, and now we're going to get late.
Okay.
Yeah?
So we just quickly run.
Yeah, quickly.
So the perfect round circle, 4-meter wide road, and with a development left and right. So right side suggestion would be to develop the left side really for pedestrians as an intense experience and to have the right side optional later on for in case we need a tram, in case we need something. Yeah, that's it. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So we'll have a few minutes of silence, and we've almost made it. After that, we're going to go to tea. All right. Any appreciations, any comments, any feedback?
Hi. It is interesting to see how the starting point of each of your presentations is so different each time. Like it's almost like you have renewed and restarted, and that's quite refreshing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other dream weaving architects?
I think the main reason why there's so little feedback is because we've more or less all seen this already. So it's like it's difficult to again sort of be. But this was nice to see quite a different approach again, or a different presentation approach. Yeah, nice. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hey, thanks both of you. Really nice. What I enjoyed most was the functions which you came up with in the different zones. I think they were very out of the box. That was very nice. And if at all Aurelio buys your idea, don't forget to charge him royalty.
Right. Anyone else? Okay, then I think we can break for tea. And we'll be back here in half an hour, right, at 4:30. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good tea time. We have 2 more presentations today, and the first one is by Shailaja. Over to you.
And team.
And team.
Shailaja,
and team.
Jitesh, and team. Yeah? Yeah, yeah. So, Auroville has started with the development of its center, the soul of Auroville, and which is a connection of ours to the divine without and within. And so it is just natural now that we go the next step, the next ripple in the movement, which is connectivity with each other, which what I believe Crown is and stands for. And so the values that we have in Mati Mandir petals and the gardens obviously need to be extended beyond to the, to the city. And when we say the crown can be then a hub of that quality and value taken from the center and towards the outside, and then to be spread further on. And so we started with envisioning of the crown as a varied space with varied kinds of textures and shapes and functions and possibilities.
Wait, sorry. I made a mistake, sorry. 1 minute.
Yeah? And then we started looking at the crown, like really, what the crown was as put in the galaxy model, as done later by Roger, and as now given to us by the TDC, and said, okay, let's take a hard, good look at it, and a closer look at it, and try to decode, and also take into our consideration the existing built up area, because that's where we need to relate the idea to. And then we said, while we do this, let us also keep our aspirational, fun-based, explorative aspect on, and not forget all that while, going into the other technical and planning aspect. And we were really inspired and at the same time triggered by this presentation by Pierre and Mona, which ended with, okay, we are relating the theory. Can we relate with the ground reality, the theory? And that's where they stopped. And I thought that's where let us start. Let us start by relating, not really the theory, because that's a bit difficult for somebody like me to come with so dream weaving with ground reality. So we said, let us take into consideration all the ground realities, few of them that we can in the given time and with our interest, and let's see where we go with that. So when we talk about concept of the master plan or concept of the galaxy, and we say this is the concept and this is what we have come up with, however, this is the existing reality. We thought, let us try and match those. So the first thing, obviously, now for everybody is the water. So what we saw was that, as you see, these are the streams. Okay, these are all the streams given to us. I don't see on the map, but everybody knows where they are. So all the streams lead to that part. And given from Julio, we have the map here of this part of Oroville being place where water can percolate and this where it cannot. And now we have got to understand that percolation is not our only concern. In fact, it should not be. We should be conserving water in different ways, as also Ganesh and Neha mentioned. So we should also have catchment areas. So what we have done here is brought out different places, the water bodies. Because if all the water is flowing out there in the Darkali area, that says something. That says that we have not caught enough of it. And shouldn't we? And so what we have here is also connections between those water bodies. So these are the water bodies, and yeah. So all these need to be connected so that they are overflowing into a pattern where we can again collect them or let them go in. And we can also find ways to, let them come, because the gradient is that way, because the contour gradient allows us to bring the, the percolative water bodies and make a catchment body here. In fact, several catchment bodies, and therefore I think we should have these water eries which are given to us over a wider master plan area, because I feel when we are looking at the crown, we really need to look at other aspects beyond the crown, and then we will find solutions to the crown. And here we have just a little example of what we have done with these ponds that I talked about, which are interconnected. And they can be interconnected along the road so as to give different possibilities to the, within Oroville of landscaping. And then coming to the galaxy plan and what we have talked about since the morning, and what I take from the previous, one of the pearls is that when we look at the galaxy plan, we do not see the road. And that is probably because the road is below the built form. If we look at that one aspect, if we say that galaxy is kind of a continuous form along and across, then based on that and the interconnections that it offers, we have our proposal here. So we said, let us go into the residential zone where the existing buildings are. And when we say that, okay, galaxy but existing, okay, let's see how we can work with both of these together. So coming to this area, I would like to bring your attention to a few of the built areas here. Like this is Kalpana project, and in my view, I feel it responds very beautifully to the, the movement spine here, because it allows for a porosity. We saw in the section presented of ATDC talked about by Sonali, that there is a porosity across. And what that offers is not just primary spaces here of people interacting, but secondary spaces which are semi-public, so that there is a series of places or spaces of interaction that are allowed. So that is the kind of edge that we are presenting to the crown. As opposed to that, what I feel happens here is that this project is not opening out in any way to the spine here, is more closed in, and in some ways that does not allow for a porosity and a conversation to happen with the crown. So looking at the foot, looking at the how the crown is going, what do you call it, the footstep of the footprint of the crown, we have taken that into consideration while putting our proposal forth. So this is what we have proposed here, and we will go into each one of these. I think we will go into this one by one, yeah. So this is the area I was talking about before. This is enlarged over here. So what we are saying is that this is already giving a kind of a permeable surface, because I feel there are three important things that we should consider while talking about the ground, at least three. And I'm sure we can come up with more, but three that I would talk to you about is that the built spaces should be interconnected in some ways. Secondly, they should be conversing with spaces and the built forms beyond. And third, that as there is a porosity of, people moving along, there should be porosity also for the trees to move along. So this is porous not just for the built area, not just for the people, but also for the green fabric. So what we propose here is, a kind of a building footprint that allows for gathering spaces, again, of the primary public nature and a semi-private nature and beyond, because one can go through, so there is a beyond possible. And where we see that at present this is not happening, because most people now put curtains, they don't want the street to face the street. Maybe we leave some space here, allow for another built form to come here, which allows for this primary space to come up, because crown is a series of interactions, we need to interact. And so let's say we have a built form which has a face with kind of activities inside of the nature that allow for public activities to happen here. So like kitchens and stuff like that coming here, services, and private spaces on the other side, so that this indeed can be a space for everybody, for all of us. And then we should also be, and this is what I would like the urban Rajiv and the team to take over from here, is how to have the guidelines for our built spaces to come up, so that we can allow public space, we can allow this conversation and this interaction to happen. And then we are also aware of the edges that we are giving. So what kind of edge are we giving? Can that be part of another area? And now to take from what Ganesh said, that can we take one element from the building next to us and go ahead? I would say, can we take one function and go ahead? If we take one function and go ahead, for instance, these are offices, guest houses, and residences, and next to it is residences. Can there be something which is common in between these, so that there is not just movement along the spine, but actually now we have real connections. It's not just buildings connecting and the walls connecting to each other, but people connecting to each other, which I believe is what Crown about. So what we are trying to also do is to have spaces. Now, this is a space left out between these, and there's a lot of space here. So what we are proposing is that where we have the trees going through, our built form a kind of a cafe, and we can have connections above the road, and we should have. So this is kind of a cafe, and let's say we are discussing about Crown and its development right here on the first or the second floor, and looking at the Matri Mandir behind us. And now what happens at the ground level is that the road widens, and this becomes everybody's space. And when you go up, it's a cafe. So this is like the shared space. I'm really working on Crown as a shared space over here. So it is widening and narrowing at places, especially to allow the interactions, to allow the functions, and the built spaces also. And then maybe spaces left here could be for, ephemeral exhibitions or ephemeral, drawings, paintings, so that a lot of what we need to say is said at the right time and goes away, and it's fine. And then there are other, interactive elements. If you want to interact, fine. Discover something. If not, also okay. And then this is the cafe I was talking about, where really the crown becomes now, all this is part of the crown. And this is all our space. And yes, we may go up and beyond. And this is one of the interconnections. So what we have really tried is to get connections across. And now coming to this area, we thought that, when we talk about the continuation of function, so now this I get from the galaxy footprint. So this is the space for the youth where they stay now. This is our circle, which I thought a lot can happen here, which can really give us number of interesting and useful spaces. But coming to the youth now, this is the space, this is the road we all come into, and our youth has to go somewhere in the corner to express themselves and whatever. Why? We have such skill. We have so much happening. We have youth that sometimes also needs to earn for themselves. Why don't we have a workshop come exhibition area here where they create here, and as people are passing by, they interact, and the youth are not in the corner anymore. They're right there with us. In fact, they are the first ones we meet when we enter Auroville. Why not? So this space for the youth, and so what I'm essentially talking of is continuity in function, and therefore a possibility of even walking through and continuity of built mass and people, both. So this is how we have kind of envisioned it. A really happening space, and our youth is right here and very much in between us, and we are the youth then, possibly, hopefully. And there are the other parts, forming spaces at different levels which are public and semi-public in nature. And then to envision this space, I talked about this last time, a huge, let's say a plaza, a marketplace, a space for painting, and which forms connections. Oh yeah, we also thought of this as exhibition space at the ground floor. At the first floor, it can be for paintings, and you actually cross over and reach here. So now we are crossing not just at the ground level, but above, and we have various activities happening. Very importantly, a place for installations, because some of our feelings are really not ephemeral, they are deep-rooted, and they need expression. And over here, we can have a hub of these, expression of these, so that when we interact around a cause, around a theme, around a sentiment. And it is right there in the middle of us, and as Manu said, isolation is not happening. And we have exhibition spaces which are interactive, where you move one panel and what is seen changes, and really it gives the feeling to each one that I matter. My involvement matters, and I feel this is what it should be. And we can have even semi-permanent or spaces like these. And yeah, for the library, I was thinking that this is library building, and we were thinking that this could be the secondary public space, because we don't want it very loud and wild. So this is the space maybe for sitting and reading, holding book exhibitions, and a semi-covered space next to it out here where we can hold book readings. And at the first floor, it can connect through. So now this at the ground floor could be library for the youth. So this way, so the youth have their expression here, they have their reading, their library over here. On the top, we are connected, and when we think of extensions of buildings, can we have them across the crown, not always think of this as a barrier, and either we go this side or that side. No, it can be either side. And so long as we are conscious of our edges of the buildings, which open up to a continuation of function, a continuation of element, and continuation of movement from the built space around, then I think that we can really reach where we want to or hope to with the galaxy. And this space could be even slightly bigger, and we can look at people 24/7 without being seen 24/7. And the spaces can be, interchangeable. Sometimes it looks like that, sometimes differently. And then we go to the third zoom in of the same thing. And what we want to come here is that when we saw the entire plan and we were talking about the water running, we said that we can hold the water at the crown. The crown can be a bund. So let us express that. And over here we can have built space. This is in the park area. So we can actually have an institute for water conservation, and which exhibits that. Again, what we have done here is opposite to the health center, have space. Whenever we have built spaces, we are plotting, let's keep space for public, semi-public, space for interaction and expression. And as you see, what we have done here is not really followed a perfect circle of the crown, because we feel in the long run, a line like that looks really circular if it has to. So this is what you see here. And it can be experiential as well in the monsoons. And that built space could be something like that, really an institute to study water, to conserve water, find ways of, and we need guidelines for that. So this is crowned with proposed interconnectivity, built trees and people. And it is ours. The crown is ours. Let us come together. Let us build it together. And we have just highlighted over here the walkway. So there's a continuity not just along the road, but even within, even beyond. So there are these continuities at several levels, so that it becomes like a kind of it is a series not just lengthwise, but also across. And then we come to the Darkali crown in industrial zone, which includes Darkali area. I would just like to repeat once that we are coming down in the gradient from 50 meters, we are coming 48 meters, and over here is 44 meters MSL. And Jitesh, we were also thinking that crown can be at different levels, does not have to just follow the contours of the land wherever required. But in Darkali area, because the land is going down, we can keep the same level and automatically be higher than the land. And over to Jitesh, if he's available. He's not there?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. But I can't see. Okay. Where's the presentation?
Can he see our screen? Yeah. Okay. Nikki, you are pausing until, thank you.
Just give me 1 minute, Jitesh. I'm going to reshare the presentation. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so
okay, great.
Go on. You tell me next if you want to change the slide.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. So here's a little exercise that I've been doing to look at the industrial zone. As we know, the levels, the topography is the key here. We see the two canyons, and in the diagram you see the lines of forces kind of going over it. So looking at the crown and seeing what could be these kind of transitions, what could be these intersections of the canyon and the crown, and also the crown and the lines of forces. So this is like, it's something just, like a flash, it came to me and I thought I'll explore it. It needs a lot more further study and exploration, but I'll just share what I have. So here I'm looking at, these lines of forces not really as, as we sort of see sometimes in Roget's sketches, are sort of these smooth, transitions from a certain level to a higher level, but as sort of a network, and as a network of, these cores. The black dots are kind of these cores, which could be service cores, could be transition, could be vertical movement, could be services. And these, the pink lines are, could be structural connections. We were talking about today in presentations about a building being, really having a lighter footprint. So these literally are really not, touching the ground. They are like off these piers, off these, coming off of these cores. So if you go to the next slide, maybe there are a few sketches I could share. Okay, I think this was supposed to come actually earlier, but I'll just talk about it a bit. I mean, this is, some overlaps, that have been presented by Neha and Ganesh earlier, which I thought was a really interesting study of these negative spaces around the crown. I mean, looking at this blue and green as kind of the positive, and then adding, layers around it. So that I think is a really refreshing sort of take on how do we really go about building, around the crown. So, but it obviously needs, a lot more, because the blue-green, as many of us architects imagine, we imagine them as sort of these static kind of forms. But whereas, whereas they're much more dynamic, and there's a lot of fluidity, like a lot of movement happening of water, of, different seasons and all that. So if we can look at this blue-green infrastructure, and then really look at the crown, and I'm also here, if you see, there's another layer of Marie's, of her analysis of the crown, where she's looking at, the crown width being varied. And I think a lot of people have, in today's presentation, kind of arrived at that conclusion. So looking at that, maybe we can go to the next slide.
Jitesh, only 2 minutes, okay?
Okay. Okay, so there are these zones on the crown. I'm looking at a section here, which is passing through the canyons, and the yellow being these transitional pedestrian zones. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is a cross section maybe of the bunds that we were, in one of the studies that I did, I saw that, we could have these bunds of like from 1.5 meters to about 5 meters high. And we could really narrow, we could have the width of the crown really from about 7 to 8 meters. And we can have the services also, or the infrastructure kind of going under the cycle lane, for example, in this case. In the next slide. Okay, so this is also like one of the lines of force, and then the intersection happening. So you see the level 40 and 45. So we enter at 45. Next slide, please. So yeah, there's this one of the sketch which shows that transition, of how how I'm imagining the lines of force to be these cores, and some of this movement could happen right from a wider width going on upper level right from the crown, and then there's always on the left you open up into a wider public area, which could be, because it's in the industrial zone, could be series of exhibitions. It could be, what Radhika and Shivangi today presented, like a heart-like situation, but happening at different levels. Next slide. This is another representation, like a really sketchy one, but something like this. Yeah, I mean, where you can have these lines of force also as these series of courtyards, which are lifted off of the ground, especially these two that are going along the canyons almost. So yeah, I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Jitesh is architect and, in fact, landscape architect at Chandigarh. And we used to work together back in the 95, 96 times. And yeah. Anything else, Jitesh, you want to say about yourself?
That's it. Thanks. Thanks for this opportunity. This is wonderful, to be part of this. It's really enriching. Thank you.
So then last in the series, or second last in the series, is exploration of the sections. This is a section given to us by TDC, and this is how I put it in the plan, where purple is the infrastructure, pink is the trees, the water drainage, and the cycle path as we know it. This is the road, 6.7 meters. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So this was supposed to come Okay, so vertical clearance as required by the Public Works Development Department is 5.3 meters max. So if you give 6 meters, it's more than enough. I can do.
Yes, you can. Right now, no, you won't.
Okay, so next, yeah. So taking this road as given to us, then we would maybe be able to, because really I'm talking here of connecting across also, not just along. So then we could have a built space over here with a column, and we could, come in, and with some cantilever we can come in. So somewhere we have built space coming in, and somewhere we have the trees. So we have kind of a series of spaces. Next. And which looks like this. So somewhere, So somewhere we have the built space, somewhere the trees, and this kind of an undulation we get if we kind of play with that space given to us of this. However, we need this both sides, not just one side. This play of edges need to happen on both sides. Next. Like this. Next. Okay, great. Yes. So then, can we play between the two infrastructure lines and somewhere go near this edge and somewhere that edge, something I had shown in the sketch previously. Now, you must know that this is really like a schematic, and I'm not saying that you have to go like that like a snake, but this happens over a long period. However, the space that I've shown is just a schematic space. So you are going on one side, and now this offers possibilities for, a play on both sides. And yet, we don't have enough space to cover, even if we, come in here with the 6.7 meter road. If we have a 4.5 meter shared road between, four-wheelers, two-wheelers, two-legged, four-legged, and all, then it is possible to, have a connection. Of course, it is said that, with the new technologies, you can span 16.7 meters, but I feel with the new technologies, we can also find ways of making our infrastructure more interesting. And so these are the possibilities where we really want to connect, and then we have road on two sides, and we can have supporting structure in middle. And we could have spaces like that. And when we talk about site, I would say the site starts from the center of the road, if not across, so that when we build our spaces, they are trying to bridge over. The intention is there. And of course, these are the parameters that we need to take care. And then let's say if we have a shifting road alignment like this, and we also shift the infrastructure, then we have further possibilities to get what initially we saw as different kinds of spaces on the crown, like that. And then We don't need to have the same width of the crown. Somewhere it is wider, somewhere narrow, somewhere straightish, and so on. And then if we see that this all is actually one, it is not like this is a road and this is green and all. It is all one, a shared space which we are talking of, then it actually looks like this. And now here we can have either trees or pillars or whatever that is required at that point. And then if we are creative with our infrastructure and have it only on one side, then we can have more possibilities. And then we can include somebody like Nina, like we have included Island for our trees. We can include Nina for our edible weeds, not the smoking kind, but the eating, cooking kinds. And we can have, interesting possibilities around crown. Something like this. A lot can happen. And just to remember that in the future, when line of force and line of goodwill and all we will have higher spaces. We need to be now welcoming the idea that we are going higher in different ways, not just through buildings. And that the trees we should preserve. If we don't, and in the end, a question about what makes a circle. And I just have a series of drawings, and I leave it to you to decide if a perfect circular line with a one center is the only way to make a circle, or can there be various ways? And I feel that if we really want to take the concept into the context, these are the words of Neha, I really like them, then we have to really keep our mechanical and logical mind slightly aside, not fully, but slightly aside, and let art and intuition take the forefront. If we do that, I think we have answers, we have possibilities, and the galaxy. Thank you.
Thank you, Shailaja and Jitesh. We'll have a few moments to gather our thoughts. Okay, any sharings, appreciations, anything you want to integrate into the designs, Dreamweaving architects?
I really like the integration of art. I think these pictures, in the end, it's really important that we not only approach it with a technical mental mind, but we let the subconscious guide us. I really like the fluidity which you showed in the last slides. It reminds me of a proposal which was made for one of the segments at one point. Yeah, really nice. So I said before, no, I like how you react with your new buildings on the existing and try to balance what you perceive as a shortcoming or to, not shortcoming, but that you react on the existing in a positive way. I find that's really good. So thanks.
Okay, we have time for one more.
Yeah, thank you for the new cross sections of the Crown Road and to really bring out all the options that there possibly could be. And I'm really curious if we have innovative solutions for infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. It's time to move on to our final presentation of the day by Dorle. And over to you, Dorle.
Anyway, actually I started doing this together with Pavneet, but unfortunately she got sick, so the last 2 weeks she hasn't been able to put in anything. So basically her part of the presentation is on hold as it was last time. It hasn't moved any further, but I've tried to evolve. So you can choose, you want to show with the mouse or you want to show with the stick?
I'll keep both options. I like options.
Okay.
Flexible.
This click to move forward.
Okay. So we're looking at the crown as a shared space, basically, and keeping.
Wait, Dolly. You're already off screen. Okay, cool.
So just reflecting on the context of Oroville and the climate, and it's the main things are air, water, the trees, and the soil, and they're all in this together with us. As in, we need them all, and we have to protect them all, and so it's a very just something we thought, okay, let's build on that, and then it goes into from that, it goes into the porosity of things. It's connected with the soil, as Jolio had explained in the technical. A soil which is not porous can't hold any water. So the more porous it gets, the more permeable it gets. That means you have spaces in between. And it's those spaces which hold the water or let the air through. And if you take it on a wider context, of course, it's the porosity of everything, of the buildings, society, whatever. And then we just wanted to look at you have the porosity. I guess it's set. The proportions in architecture and town planning, everything, proportions are very important. And proportions to field spaces, proportions of the buildings. So it's just kind of elements which have led further into what we're doing. So here we have typical, this is more like a sort of a little plaza kind of thing. It's a bit fuzzy. But this is a typical street where one feels kind of comfortable. And this gets very uncomfortable. I mean, it's basically speaks for itself. It's just different ratios of spaces and roads and streets. So then we thought, okay, let's explore something in practice just to get a sense of the width of roads in relation to the height of buildings and how the spaces feel, how the shading works. And so this is just streets of Pondicherry. This is Nehru Street, so this is a much more shared space, a lot of public functions, public space. It has different proportions, it has different functions. And the beauty of shared spaces being integrated into the urban fabric. And it creates so many possibilities. In this case, it's the temple, which is there, which is totally integrated and works as a beautiful little sort of shaded space. As opposed to the beach road, which is very well planned or very nice looking kind of place, but it's very limited in its use because there's no shade there. So it can only be used at night or in the early morning or in the evening. So it would be so much more usable if there was more shade on the beach road. Just then people could use it during the day as well. So that was kind of the take from that aspect. Then looking into planned green infrastructure, or rather unplanned, not properly planned green infrastructure. We see here in Pondi, the trees have grown and the buildings are much too close, so it doesn't really work well. It gets kind of chaotic. It looks very pretty, but in the long run, it's kind of doesn't work very well. So there's also examples where it's semi-planned. At least they've kept some space for the trees, so this will hopefully turn out to be a bit better. So these are just examples to guide us further as to what is already being done somewhere and what we can look at. So then I looked at the Crown Road, the section, and what is being done elsewhere in the world. And as it is a shared space, I said, well, then let's share it. Let's put the cars to be the guests on the Crown because they're supposed to be phased out. And even whether it's a shuttle bus or whatever it is, it can always take the back seat. And we give this Crown to the cyclists and the pedestrians. So the whole idea is, this is basically a 7-meter wide stretch for cyclists
here, this was, they felt it was a bit narrow, so they widened it. They reduced the part of the vehicle, and they increased the cycle paths on both sides so that two cyclists could comfortably cycle beside each other, which comes to a road of 7 meters. So this whole thing is 7 meters. It doesn't include the pedestrians. The pedestrians are aside. But I feel basically it can be less also. This is just to show that even in the worst case scenario, 2 emergency vehicles can pass each other, and there's even still space for cyclists at that point. So I like a lot of the proposals, people reducing the crown, the width of the road to even much further. And then I went into analyzing the mobility a little bit. Basically, I stole the mobility from Fabian and Hendrik and copied it one-on-one. This is just sort of an explanation of the different areas and why those choices were made in relation to the mobility, and why I made those choices, why I kept that. And this is a little zoom in, so then it's basically keeping the existing roads as already, then we add some roads, some paved. This loop in the industrial zone to bring in the traffic. I hesitate to go through the farm and the pony farm here and the Kotakrai farm, but okay. But definitely in this whole area of the center field, as we have this road right parallelly, and this is again looking at the next 5 to 7 years, we certainly do not need any tar roads or any paved roads here. Oh yeah, this is the outer ring road. So again, I just basically took that same concept and kept a lot of the roads and as cycle paths. Then looking at infrastructure. David said, don't forget to dream, do crazy stuff. So I said, okay, let me look at infrastructure. So, so I said, okay, what kind of infrastructure do we need where and when, or at least when, so, and how can that be done? Yeah. So then I made a little diagram for myself. Where is what? So this is the residential zone. You would have a fixed infrastructure on the outer side because most of the development is on the outside. This is the center field, which is very little developed, but it can be in the future. We'll need the infrastructure in the future, probably on 2 sides because it's the highest density residential zone. This is the international zone. It probably does not need infrastructure on 2 sides because it's very low density in terms of infrastructural needs. Then we go through Darkali, where one would have a different type of infrastructure because it doesn't really need to be connected to anything. I mean, it just needs to go through. Then the industrial zone, for now there's not that much happening, but it's supposed to be happening soon. So we put infrastructure there, keep the possibility for later. We have the bliss, again, we don't need to connect to anything. So we put a different type of infrastructure, and then here we have cultural zone and the Mahalakshmi Park. So the idea of this is that we have conduits under the Crown Road with junction boxes, which can later then connect further infrastructure as and when needed. Because my whole idea is we don't know what the future holds, and technology is advancing. And with everything, with climate change and the way things are, my idea is we should always build the absolute minimum of what is possible, because we don't know what will be possible in the future. So we build what is needed now and keep the possibility open for what may be possible in the future. So then looking at what kind of infrastructure can be done where, I actually talked to an expert in Hyderabad, and this is what he proposed, to have precast conduits, which can be house all the infrastructure. I'm not saying this is the exact size. This is just what I got online. With these junction boxes, which are really big. They're actually man-high. And everything can be connected and then reconnected and changed in there.
And in these park areas, we can just have conduit pipes. You can put in a whole bunch of pipes in there, and then you just pull in your infrastructure, keep empty pipes, you can put them in. And yes, Toby said it was really expensive. But this is much cheaper in the long run because it gives all the possibilities of expansion in the future. It can change. And you don't have to dig up every time. I just see the cycle path, Arati, Grace. They're digging it up by hand again to put in a cable. It's the so manyth time. So this is, if this is what's going to happen every time in Oroville, it's going to cost much more than in making an investment one time. So the whole thing is you just put in the things where needed, where necessary, and then you expand as and when needed. So it's not such a huge investment anyway. So this is just little sketches of how it could be. These are the flexible pipes which come into the junction box, and they can come out where and how needed. And these are the conduits with all the pipes neatly arranged. It can be in the ground, half in the ground, or even above the ground where the water needs to flow underneath. Just to show how neatly it can be done, they all have their little things of how everything can be connected. Ausolan's idea of the conduit system. So then moving into more natural environment. To understand, I just wanted to understand like how did the forests evolve where they are. So basically it relates to where the high percolation or high infiltration areas are in Oroville. So it's kind of a natural thing that the forests grew best there and were planted there. And then we have the overlay of the galaxy. So also here we see again that actually by chance or not by chance, a lot of those areas are very low built up areas. They're not high density areas. And then I go into my proposals of what I want to just propose for different areas. So this is the Darkali, International Zone Darkali Park area. Basically there you see the whole Darkali Park forest. It's a huge area. So I wanted to create a spot because this is the international zone. So I thought, okay, what can we do there? We have the beautiful forest, and something can be done because, so I wanted to just create a space where people can meet, informal meetings, cafes, whatever, singing, yoga, all these kind of things can happen there. And there could be nice space also for actually a beautiful place for the people of Kotakura village to come and enjoy the forest and maybe, I don't know, learn, but just also to have a place because they don't have a nice forest place, as far as I know, where they can. So it's yeah, just an informal kind of meeting place for people to enjoy the forest while still. This is part of Pavni's presentation where she wanted to explore more the galaxy and how that interacts with the landscape, but as she hasn't been able to put anything in, I just left it for now. And then I go to the other side of the Darkali Park, so which is this again the same situation actually. It's still the forest, it's close to the Kali temple, and with all the water percolation there. And it's connecting to the industrial zone. So I said, okay, what are the functions which would make sense to have there? So it would be a place where people working in the industrial zone could come and have whatever, enjoy the forest. There could be cafes, there could be eateries, there could be walks in the forest, meeting places, places for markets for the people to sell and mini expos for their products. So basically a shared space, but with a slightly different kind of idea than the other side of thing. Okay. And then there's this line of force, which a lot of people have talked about, and I love the way Ganesh and Neha presented it with the water. So I did actually, in addition to what they've done, my idea was just to plant a really dense TDF forest on that line of forest to bring it to signify the force of nature, and very beautifully put by Neha. I've forgotten the words now, but force of, yeah, the line of force and the force of life. So just to emphasize that and to signify. So those two things could work really well together. And then we have the next line of force, which is half on the canyon. So I said, okay, well, then we do half a forest and half a line of force, or half constructed something. Yeah. Then I just had I just wanted to a quick look at the industrial zone, the lines of force. And again, I come to the thing of the climate and the minimalism and the permeability. All these things kind of come together where I think like the lines of force or the big buildings shouldn't touch the ground too much to keep the ground open for people to move, for the wind to go, for the water to infiltrate or run through. So these are just impressions of whatever it could be. Further that, and the lines of force are quite close together in that area, so it would be just also exploring the spaces in between, what actually happens in those spaces. And then climatically appropriate, big subject, complicated, on big scale buildings, but what is important is to take into consideration the wind direction, shading of facades, which is not possible in high buildings, so then one has to see how is that done. Just some examples of buildings with big sunshades, setbacks, green facades. Yeah, taking in consideration building materials is also important. If we just continue to build everything in concrete, then we're not really doing Orwell justice. And then what the functions could be in those lines of force or in the industrial zone. Generally, I really like this example of the market hall in Rotterdam, where you have this huge building, which inside actually is a huge market hall, and then above, and this is all like offices and residences, so everything is happening in that one building. And then just, then again, I skip this one and this one. And then I get to the sections of the crown. It's been, a lot of people have talked about this. So the explorations of how it could be shaded. So if we have reduced the width, I haven't actually reduced the width of the crown much, or not at all. What I've done is I've put the infrastructure always in exactly the same position on the outside of the crown. And then what changes is the width of where the planting can be and the width and the position of the road. I didn't put measurements there, but that's the idea. So anyway, so that basically the road would be shaded in most parts of the day and year, and it wouldn't create a heat island. And then we go over to, like in the park areas, we still have the infrastructure at the same position in the conduit, either in the conduit or underground pipes. And we just have a very narrow little cycle path which goes through the park. It can be meandering wherever we want. And in the forest, all there is actually the infrastructure and basically sand cycle paths like we have them now. And then on the plaza, again, we have the same situation. Probably there we'll need two infrastructure things, corridors, so we just have a bigger space. But we always know where our infrastructure is. So this is just the idea. We have the infrastructure trench on the outside, and then it goes under the road at intervals and with the junction boxes. So this is just some examples of the shared space, the bicycles and the cars, where the car is definitely the outlaw here, or whatever, unwanted guest. And then, okay. I looked into the residential zone a bit, and a lot of others have done so as well, just to look at what the functions which are envisioned in the residential zone, and that it needs to be densified. I think that's one of the next things we should be looking into as a community. And making sure that the water can go, and seeing what is possible in which area. So this is Surrender, Arka, Mahalakshmi home, and it's a kind of a no man's land. We can't build more there, but we can bring the park in. So the park is here, so we can bring the park into that space and make it into a nice little public park area, which is inside, close to the road. And here, I personally think that we should have more connections with the Greenbelt, the residential zone, and the inner city green corridors, not only for ourselves, but also for the water and for the wildlife. Because if we cut them off, if we build dikes and fences, it's not going to work very well. So this is just looking at where the water can and might flow. And yeah, this is this area. Then keeping in mind whatever, this is the Santé, very bad sketch, but just the idea of the biophilic design, having green in and around health facilities is really important, and not only health facilities, but also offices and residential buildings. And so making this crown, I've kept it as a very neat line, but the whole idea is to put traffic calming measures so that it can actually become a public space with different things happening on it and in it. And Marie and other people have said we need shading devices, and that is absolutely correct. I haven't incorporated any of that here, but it's the idea. And I can go back. So then, just by sketching this, I came to the point there's these little pockets of things left here and there. So, and I just thought it would be nice to have little spaces for contemplation and little private kind of places to go by yourself or with a few friends or whatever, which is not everything is all it needs to be public space. It can also just be a little private space in between, a nice little green sort of courtyard or just something to experience. It doesn't always have to be, everything has to be public. Some people are also just more introvert. And then the Crown Solar Kitchen Plaza, which is, I think, something we should also develop as soon as possible to actually create that space for all those public activities, and where we can informally meet and do things, which all these cafes, eateries, outdoor performances. So this is just some images of what is possible, what would work, what wouldn't work, whatever. And then if we look further into the future to develop this stretch into the next plaza, which is something I stole from Hendrik, which his plazas worked out. So that's it. Sure.
Thank you, Darla. So we'll have a few moments of silence and gathering thoughts. So do we have any final appreciations or any feedback the Dreamweaving architects want to share for Darla's design?
Just a small thing which always fascinates me, and this relation of micro to macro, and how you have kind of brought that in with the earth element being porous, the permeability, and then the micro essence of that applying to a larger whole of town planning. So I've found that very fascinating and interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dolly, for that, and thank you very much for making the effort to look to the infrastructure. It's always a kind of difficult topic and maybe a bit boring. And so we have the tendency not to look at it. And I think it was very interesting again to find that along this 4-kilometer circle, there's plenty of different options depending on where we are. And it was very interesting. I will borrow this.
Thanks, Dola. Similar to Marie, actually the infrastructure was quite a revelation for me, the way you saw it. What I really liked was you kept both the inner and outer, and then you played with the center, in the sense that you can have it short or more, large, and have green within. Somehow I never thought of that, so it's like quite a nice brainwave actually, very nice.
Anyone else? Okay, then as you might have noticed on screen already, we will have some final comments from Doshiji and colleagues at VSF.
હેલો દોશી સાહેબ સંભળાય છે તમને?
હા સંભળાય છે.
Okay.
Yes, sure.
So thank you so much for coming and for listening. I hope you've been able to get some gist of some of the presentations. And Rajiv has given us some comments just before lunch, and we'd be very happy to hear some of your comments if possible. That'd be very nice. Thank you so much.
Mona, I want to first of all thank the whole group, the Weave group, who is trying to do things. And for me, it has been a great surprise and extremely enjoyable. The idea of participation, I was involved with the Auroville Master Plan before, almost 10 years ago. And that time I used to meet some community people, but it was not much. But today, I found how many of you have worked on the plan with the ideas, whatever they are. It's not necessary that every idea has to be relevant or comprehensive or whatnot, but the fact that you are all looking at the crown, you are all looking at the galaxy plan, and you are all talking about how do we really participate and go. 2-3 things I would just like to say. I had met Roger in 70s, also Piero and others when I came here to meet. There was a little conference. And we started talking about it, and Roger wanted me to get involved with the master plan. And so he was saying that let's do. But what I like about it is the mother's vision of a new society, a new culture, a new ideology. And that is something which I think is still very valid. So my humble question would be that how do we come together and create an intense energy? That galaxy plan is very well drawn. I had a long discussion with Roger and he wanted me to get involved. But that's not the point. The point is there is the mother's intentions to start something, to grow, sow the seed, and the whole thing would go as if it's the banyan tree. And I think that is something which is good. And I think a lot of you have worked on water, climate, functions, places. I think if this kind of an idea can continue, and the other thing which I would like to just say is while you continue this, it is going to be an ideal city of tomorrow, city of dawn. And I think that is something which I was thinking that if we can elaborate what is going to be that, then all the details will fall together. But just to say one thing only in the end, I heard most of you And lot of you have done lot of work, extremely involved, and I want to congratulate you for this. And I would say, keep going on, continue this, and let us realize the dream of the mother. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Doshi Sahib. In 2 weeks, we are going to have one more such dream weaving session where we hope Rajiv and Jaideep will be here. And then we hope to continue working with you and hopefully with the team at Vastu Shilpa to create the DDP as soon as possible. Hopefully everything should go smoothly. And we hope that this will be a great opportunity to take this forward. And in Auroville, I think it'll be a great step forward for us. So we hope to have your further continued support and blessings that we can go ahead with this. And whenever possible, your intervention and your comments will be most welcome. So thank you very much. So Jaideep,
I think what
bolo.
is great. No, what you are at the moment doing, every participant has contributed something which is different, unique, and I think all this, when you put together, we will get a good deal of information and we can synchronize it.
Yeah, super, thank you. Rajiv or Jaideep, would you like to say something?
I think I said most of the things that I still think as an overarching idea of the three things that I mentioned in the morning, so I won't repeat that. I think I'm very impressed by the quality of thought and ideas that have been, illustrated and elaborated here in the short period that all of you have had. And it's been really a pleasure to listen to all of you. So I really look forward to the next session where I think some of these now come together in more intense ways. So with that, I'll hand over to Jaideep to go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but I think it's fantastic in the way that each one of us, and especially all the participants in DREAMWEAVING, are trying to create this harmony. And I think we all, and especially the participants, have showed us a phenomenal way of creating this harmony and the possibilities that lie ahead in creating that harmony. And I think we are very thankful to have them presenting their ideas on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaideep and Rajiv. So tomorrow we are going to have discussions on the table. So again, we will be weaving ideas in smaller tables. First in the morning will be the technical and peer group, and in the afternoon will be the focus groups and the randomly selected citizens. So we are not finished yet. We will continue tomorrow, and we hope then we will have more feedback, more critical and positive feedback from others, and there'll be more chance to take this further. So with that, I don't know, David, Omar, would you like to add something? David? Oh, you can read that.
I don't really have much to say. The only thing that I'm actually happy to notice is that many of you have shifted from using stealing to sharing and other things, because I said it once in the Unity Pavilion as a bit tongue-in-cheek, and it took hold, and I didn't intend it to. So yes, it's this whole copy left, not copyright, and everybody's sharing and borrowing. Exactly. So so I'm happy to see that happen naturally. And very much looking forward to tomorrow and seeing how we work together around the smaller tables and sharing the feedback directly with the architects, where we can look around the table and look at the plans on the table. It'll be a very different atmosphere than what we've had today. And I'd really like to thank you all for coming, and I'd really like to thank you all for being so patient. It's been quite a long day. It's a lot of information, and I'm happy to see you all still sitting here. It's amazing, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Just don't leave yet.
And thank you for Vastu Shilpa Foundation for being present
say.
throughout the whole thing as well.
Yes, a big thank you to the Vastu Shilpa Foundation for being present, to Doshiji and Jaideep and Rajiv, and to all of you participants who have come, and to the Dreamweaving architects, and to our tech teams. It's all worked out very smoothly today. And all the people who have also joined in on Zoom. For just some information about tomorrow, so the morning will be for the experts, peers, and analytical group. We'll start at 8:30 here at Bhumika Hall. The afternoon will be for the focus group and randomly selected participants, and we'll start here in this hall at 1:45. Everyone is invited to lunch, so that can be a shared activity. If you are coming, please do let us know so we can count how many lunches will be there. And also a reminder to bring your forms and feedback sheets that you have filled out today, as I'm sure you won't be able to remember every single thought you've had that you've not noted down today, to give feedback to the architects tomorrow on the small tables. So this is also for you to remember, and then finally this will be also the main way that we will pass this feedback on to the architect teams.